This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to this week's edition of Doc and Jock. I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Joining me, as always, my cousin Adam, the Jock Strozinski, here today to break down all things going on in the world of college sports, the NFL, the Detroit Lions, a little bit of Tigers and Red Wings sprinkled in to round out this beautiful edition of this podcast. So much to get into. It's at least nice to see the Red Wings playing well, especially getting a W and the points against Edmonton. That was quality, 3 wins in a row. Nice there. The Tigers potentially about to crack open the wallet, maybe for a massive free agent. We'll break down a little bit of that in the second half of the podcast, but got to talk about the devastating loss of the Michigan State Spartans to the Purdue Boilermakers. Now, this is the problem with college football and the problem with polling and when you have factors that are outside your control. Michigan State lost, but unfortunately the optics of the loss were horrible. The defense was torched. The Purdue Boilermaker quarterback was just able to do whatever he wanted. He looked like freaking Joe Montana out there against the Michigan State Spartans. I had a bad feeling once you started to see Vegas kind of put out the line and a lot of the action went on the Boilermakers, maybe because there's, the reputation of the Spartans. When they have a big win, they don't come out the next week and just dominate. But when Speedy Naylor was unfortunately lost due to injury, he didn't make the trip, you had a bad feeling. And then right away, it just was a game where you're like, oh, I've seen this game before. You're like, wow. Purdue came out to play, treated it as if it was their Rose Bowl, and they dominated the Spartans and really basically took advantage of all the opportunities that they had in their mismatches to dominate the Spartans. And unfortunately, it's a costly loss, but not one in which will derail an entire season. So while it was tough, I'm not sitting here pissed. I'm upset and frustrated for a bunch of other reasons that we're going to talk about. But from what I saw, it was just one of those days where you're going to go out there and you're just not going to win on the road in the Big Ten. And it's tough. It's very tough in college football to go undefeated. And nobody expected that from Michigan State. So while it stung, what stung me more was the performance. It just wasn't the Michigan State team that you knew was playing at the level that they played it when they played Michigan.
When the defense gives up almost 1,000 yards or maybe a little bit over 1,000 yards over the course of 2 games.
Oh my God.
To a passing offense like Michigan's, which we've basically have chronologized it all season long here. And then you have Purdue, who I don't know. I don't know what to make out of Purdue. I don't know what the read is on them. I don't feel like they're a very good team, but they play up to their competition. So if you have a high number in front of your name, or I should say a low number in front of your name, you're going to get their best game. And you had to go on the road, makes it that much more difficult. And you're right. Once Vegas wasn't hedging their bet, once Vegas wasn't moving their line, you kind of had to know that this was going to be a tough one. Michigan State was in for a slugfest. And in the end, the secondary broke down. They did not force feed the running game, which was a little bit of a shocker. Kenneth Walker, this was the guy a week ago, and then this week he has a fumble and they're struggling to get him the ball. So I don't know. To me, it kind of seemed like MSU maybe shot themselves in the foot a little bit, but I feel like Purdue really took advantage of that secondary. All that being said, for Michigan State, this is what they must remember. For Michigan State, everything remains in front of them. They still control their own destiny. All they have to do is win out. Now, you and I can debate whether or not they'll win out, and I don't know. I think that secondary, you kind of seen the cracks in it, and I don't think that's a strong enough secondary to really help carry you through a gauntlet like Penn State, like Ohio State. On top of all of that, you don't have arguably your best downfield threat with Speedy Naylor, So, look, MSU, for me, right now, I still think this is going to be a good season for MSU. I think that where I was at last week, I think I maybe have to walk it back a little bit.
Really?
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. Look, we both agree. Ohio State is the best team in the Big Ten, right?
Absolutely, hands down.
Okay, so I don't think MSU gets a win against Ohio State. I don't think that they beat Ohio State. And look, I think they can go toe-to-toe with Penn State.
Especially being at home.
That's going to be a great game.
Yeah, especially being at home is good.
Right. I just don't know. I just don't see you getting by Ohio State. I don't think Michigan gets by Ohio State either. And I think Ohio State has the key to both of our defenses, right? So with Michigan and Michigan State, the secondary is the weakest part of their defense. And Ohio State has a pretty decent quarterback, and they've got some really top-end elite wide receivers who are going to take advantage. And you've seen what Purdue did. And, like, Purdue does not have a great offense. You've seen what the recipe is out there now. Like, everybody knows how to beat Michigan State. So I expect a team like Ohio State to take advantage of that. I think this is going to be a special season for Michigan State for the fact that they were predicted to finish so low, expectations were so low, and what you found out this year is that you have a damn good coach who's willing to do what it takes to make things happen and get this program where it needs to be, which is competing for national championships, something that a program like Michigan can't say. And on top of all that, you have, I don't want to go as far as say a generational talent, but you've got a running back who's going to play at that next level. You know, this is a guy who is possibly going to win a Heisman this year. That doesn't just happen. So I think it's going to be a special season. I just don't think it's going to be crowned the way that Michigan State fans would like it to be crowned, and that's with a national championship and with a chance to play for a Big Ten championship.
And then Michigan has a ho-hum victory against Indiana, kind of just playing the way in which they play. They run the ball, and they're conservative. They didn't really light up Indiana like many people felt. It was
very business-esque.
Business-esque, yes. And as a result of that, what has now come of it has been a national debate that has spanned the last 24 to 36 hours in regards to the college football playoff poll, which came out and was interesting because comments were made during the ESPN broadcast. And the top four are obviously where they need to be. The interesting part comes in where the committee put Michigan 6 and Michigan State at number 7. And when the committee chairperson spoke, he said, statistically speaking, when we look at it, Michigan, the Michigan Wolverine football team, is more complete than the Michigan State Spartans, and that was their logic. And that's fine. I get it. You know, the argument can be made that, well, they just played each other, so that should be the tiebreaker. But like we said when we started the podcast, the optics of Michigan State's loss, losing to Purdue, even though they have a victory over Iowa, who was a top 10 team, even though they defeated Michigan State and they do have a history of playing well, it stunk for Michigan State because in the eyes of voters and committee members, it looks like, based on what they saw this week, that there's a team that struggles mightily on defense, so they put them at number 7, which is fine. Really, guys, it's not going to bother Spartan fans too much other than Michigan fans chirping, going, ha, we're ahead of you. It doesn't matter. Spartan fans only care about the scoreboard against Michigan and the potential that, hey, if the Spartans, you know, maybe take advantage of the loss, learn from it, grow from it, then there's an opportunity to potentially defeat Maryland, Penn State, and Ohio State. And if that happens, Michigan State will potentially have an opportunity to avenge that loss against Purdue in Indianapolis, which would be amazing to see if Mel Tucker can rebound and have this team moving forward. So while it's annoying, it's irritating to see everyone going, ha, Michigan fans live on what's going on in the polls. Michigan State fans live on what's going on the field. And the whole rivalry was great. The aspect of Michigan bringing up the bad calls after the Indiana game, it was crazy to hear Jim Harbaugh go back to the Michigan State game after he was asked that question. But for me, the polling is fine because it does not preclude Michigan State from getting in the top 4 if they win out. If they defeat Penn State and they defeat Ohio State, they have a lovely, lovely opportunity to have a wonderful season that will really impress a lot of us. But we got to be concerned because Maryland throws the ball a lot more than Purdue does. And if that film now has been exposed by everybody in terms of what Michigan did, what Purdue did, oh, Lord, heaven help this secondary, because if they don't get pressure and they continue to struggle, then this is going to be a long day at home. But I do expect the Spartans to rebound and really, really get back to their roots and get the W, at least against Maryland. Now, on the other side, I'm curious on your end, cuz I'm kind of getting the sense that Michigan fans are just right now happy that they're number 6, but they realize oh man, we got to go on the road to Penn State. They're not really feeling all that confident that Michigan's going to take down the victory. I'm not sensing that the majority of the fan base is really even giving the Wolverines a chance. I think they're going to play well, especially, the injury to Corum, we got to find out and see what happened, but Haskins has done pretty well when he's been given the opportunity with the Rock. I'm just curious, what do you think this weekend? What are the keys for Michigan, and do you give him a chance at all?
I mean, I give him a chance, but I'm not confident. Here's the thing. I have zero confidence in this coaching staff. Every big game that Jim Harbaugh plays in, he finds some way to screw it all up. So I don't have a whole lot of confidence in this Michigan team going to Penn State this week. Look, it's one of those things like you brought it up. You just touched on it. Like, just beat Indiana, but you're still hung up on Michigan State. Like, and you're hung up on calls from a referee. Be better than the referee. Like, don't let the referee beat you. Like, this is something that you talk about when you play sports. You know that there's going to be calls that aren't going to go your way. You talk about it when you're sitting on the bench. You talk about it when you're in the game. Look, there's going to be calls that aren't going to go our way. We just have to be better. Michigan was not better than Michigan State that day. They had a 16-point lead. They lost by 20. Like, what are we talking about here? Who cares about the referees? Who cares about the one play that might have been a touchdown, might not have been a touchdown? Be better. I don't trust this coaching staff, and there's not really anything dynamic with this offense, and I think that's part of the problem. You just lost Blake Corum. We're not sure if he's going to play or not, but Blake Corum's going to be limping into this game if he does play, and he's your most elusive, explosive player on offense, and now he's hampered. So you have zero explosivity on the offensive side of the ball. We've already touched on the defense. Yeah, the defensive line is good. Yeah, the linebackers are pretty good. But that secondary is the weakest part. And I'm not sure how many Penn State games you've watched this year, but Penn State it doesn't mind throwing the ball around. I know that their quarterback's a little bit banged up as well, but they don't have a problem throwing the ball around. They have some pretty good wide receivers there. So I have little to no confidence in Jim Harbaugh coming out of this game with a W, which is part of the problem. If you're a Michigan fan, you have zero reason to be chirping a Michigan State fan right now. Who cares if you're ranked 6 and they're ranked 7? They just beat you a week ago. The fact that the rankings are that way are absolutely asinine to me and are completely silly. If anything, it should be flip-flopped. Michigan State should be 6. Michigan should be 7. There is no reason that Michigan should be higher than Michigan State. Yeah, if you look at statistical categories, right, Michigan is a little bit better than Michigan State. And if you want to go off the fact that, yeah, Michigan beat Indiana, who the hell cares? Did Michigan State play Indiana this year? Didn't they beat them? I mean, what are we talking about here? It was decided on the field. And guess who won? Michigan State won. So I don't think Michigan fans should be chirping any Michigan State fans. Michigan State fans should not be upset. They control their destiny. And if you're a Michigan fan, you really need to get your head out of your ass, and you need to understand the task at hand, because you got to go to Penn State. You got to get a win there. You've got to go. You're going to play Maryland, and then you're going to play Ohio State. And the only way you get to fulfill any dream you have is by winning these 3 games and hoping that Michigan State trips up, hoping that Ohio State trips up. That's the only way you get to go where you want to go. So don't go chirping too loud, because you don't have the right to do that. You haven't done anything yet. You haven't done anything in a long, long time.
Both of them sitting 8-1, both of them moving forward. I think, yeah, Michigan has a tough test this weekend. Michigan State, I think, will rebound. And then the nitty-gritty, baby. It's a 3-game playoff, and Michigan State are playing the same 3 teams. So let's see what happens. Let's see how it plays out. This is nitty-gritty time. This is November football. This is the time for the cream to rise to the top. And there's a good chance it'll be Michigan State. There's a great chance it'll be Ohio State, and maybe even Penn State will rise from the ashes and get a big W, and we'll see how that progresses moving forward. But it's going to be, I think, a whiteout again at Penn State. I think there's going to be an opportunity for them to play a really solid football game, and I can't wait to see how Michigan kind of adapts. Do they kind of learn from mistakes against the Spartans? Do they go on the road and get a victory for Jim Harbaugh, who desperately needs another road victory? Winning against Wisconsin's nice, but when you need to win against Penn State, you got to handle business, and especially in your preparations now moving forward for the Ohio State University, who's starting to roll on offense. And, I just think it's Ohio State's to lose, and we just have to hope that the games are competitive with an opportunity late to kind of get the victory and punch each other in the mouth. So we'll see how it plays out. Michigan State, Ohio State, Penn State, and the Michigan Wolverines. We'll see how this plays out moving forward. But it's good times, man. Georgia, Alabama, Oregon, Ohio State. Good stuff, man. I'm liking it. I'm liking how college football is taking over on Saturdays. Lots of real good information, lots of good football that's going to take place on the weekend. Now we do have to turn our attention to a football team that's not really generating a lot of buzz, but at least this week, a little jolt of excitement that we could talk about in that a wide receiver came available. And at first, when Odell Beckham Jr. was made available, we were like, okay, they're going to do it. It's no brainer when you can get him cheap and da-da-da. But then you heard that Cleveland restructured.
Hold on. Stop. Do you want Odell on this team, or would you like to have seen them go make a play for Odell?
Hell, I would have loved to have seen it. Dude,
Are you crazy? Do you like cancer?
No.
Do you think cancer's fun? Do you think cancer's great? You have a quarterback who can't throw the ball more than 15 yards downfield.
Cancer's good for podcasting. Cancer's good for writing. Could you imagine Odell Beckham?
He says root for radio is what he says.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, my content, bro. What are we looking at? We're looking at what are we going to write about? What are we going to talk about? Bro, you can only ask, what would it mean to get a victory? Which is asked every week by a multitude of reporters. I've never asked that question because it's just one win. I mean, for me, it just means that you're going to not get the number one pick. But you can only ask so many things so many ways. So getting Odell would have been great. The potential of his dad saying, who is this Jared Goff? How the hell did he get this much money? He could have brought race into it. He could have brought, black quarterback, white quarterback situation. He could have done a lot of things. But once you realize the Browns restructured the deal to take years off of the contract and not make it easier for teams to claim him, then it just was a one-day Friday situation where we're like, oh, we could get Odell. And then it didn't happen, and now he went unclaimed because the Lions couldn't afford to pay $7.25 million on his contract. They couldn't do it. So what did they do? They went to the bargain basement, baby. They were like, we can go younger, and we can find somebody that actually knows Jared Goff. And it worked out perfectly where a player from the Titans just signed there. It just didn't work out. When you sign somewhere and you're expected to replace Corey Davis, and then they go around and sign Julio Jones, you're like, damn. And unfortunately, I did a story on SIL Lions regarding what the Lions are getting in Josh Reynolds. It's a little bit more sizzle than steak, but it's somebody that at least knows Jared Goff and can get in this offense. And if he can stay healthy, which he hasn't done, you got to remember, guys, when a team gives up on you and you're the Titans, who could use as many offensive weapons as possible after losing Derrick Henry, and they're like, see ya, and they're like, okay, you want to be waived? Thanks, bye. You got to look at that for a moment. Is he going to save the Lions offense? No. Is he a little bit better than Benson and Hodge? Hell, we're like the wide receiver rescue program where every practice squad bottom end wide receiver is coming on the Lions. But at least he knows Goff. He had a run with him back in the day, so that provided a little bit of spark this week. This week was about the offense and coming after the bye. And the one thing that was fascinating to me was the fact that Dan Campbell's like, I'm going to plop my ass in that meeting room and I'm going to start giving my input. Which is a little bit, I think, a slight against Anthony Lynn because he's like, well, the supervisor's got to sit here and weigh in, and which is crazy, too, because even though the Lions' offense needs to be more explosive, I don't think they can execute it. So Anthony Lynn understands that, and here's the problem. My brain thinks, oh, boy, could Jared Goff get in the Ty Detmer 6-7 interception range this week? Because his boss, Dan Campbell, is like, I need you to be more explosive. We need to push the ball down the field. I need you to make explosive plays. Goff's got to be like, oh my God, this is his worst nightmare. He's like, I got to fit the ball in tight windows. I got to throw the ball deep. So I'm so fascinated to hear that. But what'd you make of when you heard the news that Dan Campbell wants to stick his nose in the offense and have more of a say and has been spending more time weighing in on the offense and the game planning?
I mean, I find it interesting that he wants to involve himself that much more. I think it's a good thing, but I don't really think it's going to translate to anything. I mean, Dan Campbell can't go out on the field and he can't throw the ball. Dan Campbell can't go catch the ball. All Dan Campbell can really do is say, hey,
go deep.
Right. This play was supposed to go to the Z receiver. Instead, you checked it down and you threw it to the back. And honestly, if you've watched the games closely, and I know you have, but I challenge everybody out there this week when the game's unfolding, watch the game. Watch closely. Watch what happens. There are plays downfield. Jared Goff just does not push the ball downfield. So unless Dan Campbell is somehow going to light a fire underneath his ass and really give him the self-confidence to be able to toss the rock that far downfield to where it's going to translate into scoring plays, I don't know what this really does for the offense. I don't know what this really does to help generate more offense. Because with Jared Goff, there's a reason that DeAndre Swift has as many receptions as he has and is leading the NFL, or he's a top 5 receiving running back, because everything's a check down. But Jared Goff, basically, if it's not within 12 yards of him, he's looking to check it down to the running back. And everybody knows that. Like, everybody understands. All you got to do is crowd the line of scrimmage, and he freaks out. You said this perfectly, and I think it was probably preseason game number 1. You're like, he's risk averse. He does not put the ball downfield, does not have the ability to put the ball downfield, and he can't throw into tight spaces. All he can do, he's most accurate when he is checking the ball down. The problem with that is, even this year, he's still throwing behind guys. He's not leading wide receivers. There are a ton of bad passes. 2 weeks ago, I watched the game, and I ended up recounting to my girlfriend as the game was unfolding in front of us, and I was like, that's a bad pass. Like, that's not a good pass at all. Like, he threw it behind the receiver and damn near got him killed. Like, you can't do that. I think it was a pass to Hawkinson, where Hawkinson basically had to go up and go behind himself, and he ended up getting his legs taken out. If he would have led Hawkinson a little bit, that play could have went for at least 10, 15 more yards, and possibly Hawkinson breaks it and gets it to the house. Jared Goff just isn't a very good quarterback, so I don't know how Dan Campbell sitting in the meeting room is going to really translate to touchdowns. I just don't see it. And I applaud him for wanting to take more on and wanting to really give himself to the team and really do more. You just don't have talent. And I have to keep telling myself this as I'm watching these games, because I think I'm pretty much like you. I get fired up. I don't know if at this point, because you watch it live so much, you're just kind of in this malaise where you're like, I don't care anymore. But I get pissed off at the end of the game still. Like, I'm still at that point. Like, I'm not checked out yet.
No,
so
exactly.
I still get fired up.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've talked about it. What fires me up is when you see 10, 11, when you see the inability to get 11 guys on the field. That pisses me off, because that's procedural. That's the stuff that you're doing in practice. You can't get 10, you can't get the 11 guys on the field consistently. You're showing up there with 10 or 12. That's a huge communication problem, and that's a sign that coaching is not where it needs to be. And like I've said all along here on the podcast and in the writing, I just want to see the basics get executed. Throw a fundamental pass. Compete. Don't get blown out in every game. Don't make critical mistakes. Don't make it where you have a return for 50 yards, but that's negated by a silly procedural penalty. TJ Hawkinson made a couple of procedural mistakes where you have a nice play, but it's waved off because TJ Hawkinson's not lined up properly. That's procedural. That's coaching. You got to pay attention. You can't have mental errors and lack of focus at this point in time. And it just always seems to be with the Lions that when there's a good play for them, it's negated by a penalty. So what's your thoughts on Josh Reynolds? Are you looking at it like, well, at least it's somebody new for Goff and somebody for us to kind of explore his story and see if he can make something happen? Or are you a little bit nervous that if it doesn't work out, if Goff still looks terrible, then you just throw your hands up in the air and you just say, all right, let's just look at some of the rookies?
Well, I'm expecting Goff to look terrible, but I think this is a comfort signing is what I think this is.
Comfort,
You've got a guy that...
Comfort and joy.
Comfort, right. Start singing Christmas songs.
All right.
This is a guy that Brad Holmes knows because he drafted him when he was with the Rams. And then this is a guy that Jared Goff has some familiarity with because he played with him when he was on the Rams. So this is almost, I think for lack of a better term, it's almost like what you've seen Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia do, where they brought in a bunch of expatriates. You see at this point in the season, there's not a ton of guys who are really available who you maybe want in your locker room. Because Odell's available. You don't want him in your locker room. This is a guy who you don't mind having in your locker room. You're going to give him a shot. You're going to see what happens. He doesn't cost you anything. He's not going to cost you a lot of money. I think, what is it, like $500,000 he's going to cost you? So he doesn't cost you a lot of money. And again, it's familiar. This is a guy who Goff has played with. So he's familiar, and hopefully Goff trusts him. This is a guy that Brad Holmes feels confident about, so he brings him in and takes a chance on him. I think it'll be interesting to kind of see how this plays out. I'm going to reserve some judgments for maybe the next 2 or 3 games because I like to see him get acclimated to the offense, and hopefully he can contribute something. But I don't I don't think this is going to be your guy for the next 3 years. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think this is a guy who's got a huge ceiling. I just think this is a guy who's going to come in and he's going to compete with the rest of the guys. This is the worst receiving core in the NFL. So a little bit of talent might help. I think he is obviously a NFL wide receiver. I just think he's not a number 1 or a number 2 guy.
You know
what makes sense.
You know who this is really bad for? Kennedy. Unfortunately, our guy Tom Kennedy got waived, but he got brought back to the practice squad, which was expected. But you just feel for the guy because, and which the tough part is with a guy like that, I'm almost taller than he is. So he's definitely ripped. He's in football shape, but you just look like, you go, man, that's a guy that's Mr. Tryhard. And you feel bad for that guy because he gets into he gets some game checks, which is good. But unfortunately, a guy like that is always going to be the guy that's sent down. And there's always those guys in the league that are really fascinating, that they get their opportunity, but they're always number 52, 53, 54 on the roster. Like this year's Javon McKinley, who's up and down on the practice squad, getting cut from the practice squad, but getting brought back. And then Kennedy, who I think they wanted to really see if he could handle getting some run on the 53-man active roster, but unfortunately, didn't do a whole heck of a lot, didn't distinguish himself. So poor Kennedy gets sent back down to the practice squad. Maybe he'll make his way back eventually, but it's an upgrade. That's all you can ask for is just give Goff an opportunity to run 5 wide receivers and just see what happens. Let it rip. Free fantasy advice before we talk about the Wings and Tigers here. Line up on the Steelers, baby. Roethlisberger, Deontay Johnson, Najee Harris, Pat Freiermuth. In fantasy football, I pick them up 2 weeks ago off the waiver wire, play him 1 week, and then I have the other top tight end, Mark Andrews, and I play him, and unfortunately I made a huge mistake, cost me a victory and likely a playoff berth. But Pat Freiermuth, dude, two touchdowns on Monday Night Football against the Bears. He probably could get 3. I think he's going to be my breakout star of the week in fantasy football. The Lions are going to have a hard time, and dude, he's going to have the league's going to have a hard time with Pat. Dude, that guy's a monster, and that's what you'd hope that T.J. Hockenson would turn into, but we'll see moving forward. But I think it's going to be a 10-point loss, 30-20. On the road, Heinz Field, 0-9, and then off to Cleveland for these Detroit Lions. But hey, as long as you're number 1, trekking towards that, that's the goal, and continue to evaluate the rookies is probably the best case scenario to keep you happy. So make sure you stay tuned to Detroit Sports Podcast, SIL Lions, as we break it all down and bring you all things related to the Detroit Lions. Cuz before we talk about the Tigers and potentially busting out the wallet, I think you and I are impressed, bro. The Wings are playing a nice brand of hockey led by the youngsters, Raymond, Mo Sider, I believe. Mo Sider, Lucas Raymond, Bertuzzi is among the elite scorers. And I got a chance to watch the Edmonton game top to bottom. And wow, that was a fun game. And oh my God, cuz the number 2 that they got there in Edmonton behind Connor McDavid, holy crap. You got McDavid.
Draisaitl?
Yeah. You got this individual who... and McDavid, who's just speed and pure finesse, who can go 1-on-4 and score a goal. And then you got this other monster dude that's just like the Brendan Shanahan monster power forward. And you're just like, damn, that's nice. I like what Kenny Holland has done with that team. And to see the Wings compete and to hold the puck and to play a lot better hockey was really inspiring. And after Dylan Larkin missed some time, the Red Wings, picked up some points in our 500 squad right now, which is good at this point in time in the season to win some games, secure some points. You're starting to see some of these youngsters kind of emerge and kind of set the scene to say that Steve Yzerman understands talent evaluation.
I mean, it's exciting if you're a Wings fan. That's one thing I think you can take out of this season. I don't know if they're going to make it to the playoffs. I don't know.
Wait, did you say playoffs?
I said playoffs.
Wow.
I don't know if they're going to make it or not.
Wow.
But they're exciting. Like, this team's fun to watch, and you're starting to see kind of what Steve Yzerman was putting together. You're starting to see the fruits of what he's been able to basically pick out of the draft and try to cultivate here. So if you're a Wings fan, this is a great time. Like, this is exciting. This is getting in at ground floor, and you're like, all right, cool. We got some guys who can do some things. And it's weird. You've got a guy like Dylan Larkin, who I'm not a huge fan of. I make no bones about him. Not a huge fan of Dylan Larkin, all right? You got a guy like Tyler Bertuzzi, who I'm a huge fan of. Love the way Tyler Bertuzzi plays. When these two guys are on the ice together, when they're playing, this team hasn't lost in regulation, which is a great sign. That means you got guys who are basically playing their role, and you got these young guys coming up. Lucas Raymond's been torching the league. Novestikov played the other night, and he had 2 goals, looked outstanding. And you're getting a lot of production from a guy like Mo Sider. So you've got your big 2 up front, and then you're getting these younger guys helping to fill in and put points on the board. And you can see the cultivation and the building of this team. So if you're a Red Wings fan, you need to be excited. This is awesome to watch. I'm excited because it shows you that you've got a GM who understands, like you said, talent evaluation, how to put a team together, and can address different guys and go get them. When he drafted Mo Sider, the entire NHL was like, "Ooh, are you sure about that? Is that the guy you really want?" Same thing with Lucas Raymond. When Lucas Raymond was taken, everybody was like, "Yeah, he's good, but are you sure he's going to translate?" And then he's here. And both these guys translate, and they're killing it. So, look, he's going to have a couple of misses, but what you're seeing right now, I think, should give you a ton of hope that this team is next year, this team will be competing for a playoff spot. I think this year they might just fall short. They'll probably end up losing that final week. They'll end up losing their playoff berth. But I think right now it is awesome to watch and awesome to see.
Yes, sir, and especially see quality goaltending from both of the Red Wings goalies has been really impressive. So Washington today, baby, real interesting to see a team that's been rebuilding for a minute start to maybe turn the corner, and that makes it real fun to talk about and watch and observe, and to really see how this team progresses, and to see that Tyler Bertuzzi is playing at that level is nice, with Dylan Larkin, who's starting to show up a little bit, starting to really take hold of being the captain and leading this team. And then, like you said, Mo Sider, holy cow, did you see that goal, that game winner? Wow. It was nice to see his first career NHL goal in overtime to get the extra point for the Red Wings. All right, final topic here on this episode of Doc and Jock. I'm curious because I'm conflicted. Really, with the Tigers, I'm torn. Because signing a player of the caliber of Carlos Correa is juicy. It's really nice. And it's more of an advertising signing, potentially, that could indicate, hey, we're interested. I like the addition of the catcher. It's nice. You know, Haas was okay, but this is an upgrade in regards to adding a catcher right away the day after the World Series ended. But I'll say this. I'm not sure I want to spend $300 million in that sweepstakes to get in on Carlos Correa, just because of his injury history, just because of the fact that he could go cold at the worst possible time. Yeah, he's a primetime player, and you expect that he's going to show up in the playoffs. But can he reach down in that well one time again and do it here in Detroit? I think you don't need to do it. I think that if you continue to add, if you just have $30 million and you want to allocate it, why not just get 2 players in the $15 million a year category and get 2 players? I mean, I think that would behoove them. 1 starter and 1 position player that can match the baseball. I think that's probably the better way to go. But I think people are so enamored with, oh my God, he played for AJ Hinch. Oh my God, he was part of a winner. Oh my God, he's this. And oh my God, he solves this. Yeah, you get probably productivity the first 4 or 5 seasons. But you're also staring down the barrel of 5 years and $150 million of money wasted. And are you really 5 years away from potentially winning the World Series? Maybe. You could have him as a piece, but it would only raise the payroll to around $110 million if you did it, so it wouldn't bankrupt the Detroit Tigers. I just see that I'm not as enamored, me personally, with this Carlos Correa deal. I'm not getting my cockles all warm thinking about it. I'm just thinking, you know what? More. If you're going to spend $30 million, I'm always of the opinion, get 2 things instead of 1. Am I wrong? Am I being too risk averse? Am I being too cheap with my mindset? Or is this the guy that says, hey, get him, and then you just open up the checkbook and get many more players as well?
Man, I was really hoping you were going to be all aboard the Carlos Correa train, because I'm in lockstep with you, man. Same. Here's the thing. You've seen how the Miguel Cabrera contract has kind of hampered you towards the end of his career here, right? This will be essentially the same thing. Yeah. You're going to give $300 million to a player who, towards the end of it, it's just not going to work out. So I was reading on a couple of different sites. There was this great article on Yahoo Sports where it broke down a ton with like what Fangraphs has and kind of what he contributes as far as defense and if he's worth it or not. And yeah, he is probably the best shortstop on the market this free agent period. Like, hands down, he's going to be the best. But at what price? And they're talking about giving him like $330 million for 8 years. For me, when he hits, how old is he? I think he's what, 29? Going to be 30? Am I right or am I wrong here? I'm not sure. I'll have to look that up. Yep. But towards the end of his career, is that really worth it? I mean, you're going to be staring at...
No, he just turned 27, September of 94.
So he'll be 35. So he'll be well out of his prime. And is he going to still give you the same defensive production that he's giving you now? I don't know if that'll be there in 8 years. And that's a chance that you're going to have to take. And you're right. He tends to have some injury issues. His bat tends to go a little bit cold now and again. And these things are going to happen. I think the one thing that you do get if you do pay him all this money, this is now the face of your franchise. You've got your player. You remember how when they brought Pudge in?
Yep.
Pudge was basically that guy who really helped trigger the spending bonanza that got the team to where the team needed to be so they could compete for playoff spots and get to World Series. This would be that guy. He would be the guy who's saying, yeah, we're opening the checkbook up and we're ready to spend.
Marketing. It's marketing. You know, how much of his marketing? Get some fans in the seats, build some excitement. But, bro, you got potentially a lot of nice young arms. You got young players that are coming up, so I'm just curious to see if they do it. But I think they're negotiating. I think they're potentially going to make the offer. I mean, I like the fact that Houston kind of gave him a bullshit offer, and he's like, I'm not taking that. So I think he's out. I think he's out on Houston. So we'll see if it plays out. But, 27 years old, and I think that he would shore up the shortstop position for the next 5 years, and you could build around him as you have these young cats with big bats and big arms come up and really try to make their way in Major League Baseball. But really, bottom line, A.J. Hinch and Al Avila have got this thing turned around where there's a little bit more momentum on their side. And they're talking the right stuff. They're talking about winning, competing, and playing at a high level. And that's all you can ask for is the perception that, hey, even if you say we made an offer but he turned it down. I'm looking here on Wikipedia, and I love his name. Carlos Javier Correa Oppenheimer. So, Puerto Rican. I wonder why. It'd be funny to ask, why. So what's wrong with Oppenheimer? Carlos Oppenheimer seems, kind of a professional. He cut off the last part of his name there. Carlos Correa. It does sound more of a professional name there. Carlos Correa as opposed to Carlos Javier or Carlos Oppenheimer. Good stuff with the Tigers. I think it's great around town. The night we're recording this, I'm going to plop down. I'm going to check out the Pistons. Obviously, Cade taking on the number 2 player. We all want to see how that looks. Does the Pistons on the road against Houston, does that look and bring about the fruitful matchup? Unfortunately, it was a slow start for Cade Cunningham, but now he's starting to pick it up, and you're starting to see what he can do with his passing, his vision, and what he's able to do. So I'm definitely curious to see how this is going to play out tonight. As we're wrapping this up, I really want to see how it plays out in regards to the number 1 and number 2 players taking on each other, especially given the fact that Jalen Green maybe got a bad rap because of the fact that he's kind of a me-first, flashy kind of guy. So we'll see how it plays out. By the time this drops, the game will have taken place, and we'll look at the Pistons in future episodes of this podcast. Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. If anything that you've heard has made you agree or disagree, feel free, lop off a tweet. We'll definitely listen. Anywhere you listen to your favorite podcast, make sure you find Detroit Sports Podcast. You hit that subscribe button, and our daily content will find you, where we cover Michigan sports, Michigan State, the Lions, Tigers, Wings, and the Detroit Pistons. All things Detroit sports are covered at Detroit Podcast, the most interactive Detroit sports Twitter page. People come to us for all kinds of advice, all kinds of rants, all kinds of praise, all kinds of critique, all kinds of hate. Anything you want to see in sports, you'll find on our Twitter page. And you guys have made it fun now for the better part of 8 years, and we're greatly appreciated. All right, podcasting time comes to a close. You've just downloaded the latest edition of Doc and Jock.